Hi, this is Mark the Shark from Schlesinger Communications, and we are happy to have as our guest today Jeff Plate from Trans-Siberian Orchestra. Thank you so very much for joining us on the program today, Jeff.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
And I know that you and the rest of the guys in Trans-Siberian Orchestra, you're very busy this time of the year with the holidays coming up. We're going to go ahead and jump right into it. For our listeners' sake, I'd just like to go ahead and, rewind the clock a little bit and let's talk about the beginning. You're one of the original members of Trans-Siberian Orchestra. And I know you were in some previous bands, before TSO. Can you just fill us in on who came up with the idea, how Trans-Siberian Orchestra was created, founded, and of course the evolution of the band?
It's an interesting story, to say the least. So I guess this probably began down in Florida with a band called Savatage. John Oliva and his brother Chris formed this band, this four-piece rock band, back in 1984, I believe it was, 83.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
They did several records, had some success, had some failure, and along the way, they met up with a producer named Paul O'Neill. So Paul O'Neill came into the Savatage world in 1986 and helped them produce and write the album The Hall of the Mountain King, which literally turned the career of Savatage around. Hall of the Mountain King, it became one of the classic metal records of all times. It really
I remember they did a cover version of the Badfinger classic Day After Day sometime in the late 80s that got a lot of rock radio airplay.
Yeah,
in this area.
So that when that song particularly came out, I think it was on the record Fight for the Rock.
Right.
This was a real turning point in the band because they were struggling to be who they were. They were struggling to be what the record label wanted them to be. And so anyhow, Paul O'Neill comes into the picture and kind of takes this raw talent that the Lever brothers had and this band had and refined it. So Paul became the group's manager, songwriting partner, and lyricist and producer. Hall of the Mountain King, Gutter Ballet, Streets, and an album called Edge of Thorns. These were all recorded between 86 and 1993, I believe it was. But Paul O'Neill and John Oliva had also at the time started dabbling in some non-rock and roll projects, mainly aimed at theater, aimed at Broadway. Paul was a New York City guy. He loved Broadway. So him and John and some of their writing partners were working on this kind of stuff. In 1993, Savatage suffered prior to that, John Oliva, who was the lead vocalist in the band, stepped down due to health reasons, his voice, the torches of the road and everything.
Right.
They brought in a new vocalist named Zach Stevens. Zach Stevens and myself, we worked together in a band in Boston in the late 80s, early 90s. Zach became the lead singer of Savatage. Soon after that, the lead guitarist, Chris Oliva, died in a car accident. So Savatage at this point was in complete turmoil. Suffered some tragedy, some serious member changes. The original drummer left the band. Zach told Paul O'Neill and John, he's like, I got the guy, this guy, Jeff Plate. They brought me in. So Paul O'Neill and John Oliva had already been kind of working towards what would become Trans-Siberian Orchestra. And if you listen to the Savatage records, Gutter Ballet and Streets, you can hear hints of TSO in that already. So 1995, I'm in the band. We do a studio record called Dead Winter Dead. And on this record is this Christmas song, Christmas Eve, Sarajevo 1224. It was part of the story that Paul had written, part of the concept he had written for this particular record. And at the time, I was the new guy in the band. I stood at the back of the room. I watched, I listened, I let them debate over whether the song was going to make the record or not. But lo and behold, it did. And when that album was released, that song took off in a completely different direction, became the vehicle for Paul O'Neill to create the Trans-Siberian Orchestra, which was basically his dream project. And here we are, 30 years later. This project is just still getting bigger every year. The tours are a huge success, and Paul's work has really stood the test of time and is going to be here for ages.
When you got everything started with Trans-Siberian Orchestra, did you and the other members have any idea that this ride would last this long?
We had no idea that it was even going to begin, to be honest with you.
Okay.
I mean, when we did the Dead Winter Dead record, like I said, this Christmas song was it was an odd idea to place it on this rock record. But Paul totally believed in this song, in this production.
Right.
So obviously when it hit the radio and became this instant holiday hit, we knew, oh, wow, Paul's onto something here. We record our first record, Christmas Eve and Other Stories, in 1996. That becomes a huge hit. It's our biggest seller to date, our most popular record. But to think that even at that time, it was obvious Paul and his team had created something that people were really enjoying and really digging, The Christmas sound completely changed when Paul brought that song to the masses. All of a sudden, here's this Christmas song like nobody's ever heard before. And it just kind of opened the door for everything that followed after that.
And there you go. And Christmas Eve Sarajevo, a bona fide Christmas classic. You hear it everywhere on just about every radio station that plays either rock music or any kind of holiday music. And that's got to be a great feeling when you hear that song and other TSO songs, being played when you're out and about. Let's go ahead and look at this upcoming tour. I know you're really excited with the 2024 tour. I believe everything kicks off out in the Midwest, November 13th. The show that we are really making a lot of noise about is the November 21st show at Bryce Jordan Center in State College. And with the upcoming tour, I know there's a couple of milestones that Trans-Siberian Orchestra will be reaching. I'm going to call it the 2020, the 20th anniversary of the Lost Christmas Eve. But I also want to talk about 20 million concert tickets sold and also $20 million that you have helped raise for local charities. So let's go ahead and touch on the first thing, the 20th anniversary. With that, I understand you have a really neat collector's edition vinyl coming out for any vinyl collectors out there.
Yeah, vinyl is the craze. What comes around goes around, right? It's something you and I probably grew up on when we first started getting into music. But it's really great to see vinyl coming back out, just to have that, just to be able to hold that in your hand, just to see the artwork, just to experience what we all experienced, back in the 70s and 80s, 60s, whatever. But yeah, so there's some really cool little trinkets that are going along with this album. 20 years ago, we released The Lost Christmas Eve, and this was the third installment in the Christmas trilogy. We had released Christmas Eve and Other Stories in 96. The Christmas Attic was 98, and then follow it up with The Lost Christmas Eve to complete the trilogy. But we're really excited about bringing this story back out this year.
Now, with the upcoming 2024 tour, you guys have got a jam-packed schedule. I don't want to give any of the secrets away or any of the surprises, but what can our listeners look forward to as far as the show that comes to the Bryce Jordan Center? And are there any, new surprises or anything that you'd like to tell us about that people should be looking and listening for at the show?
So one thing that Paul O'Neill established when we first started touring was that every tour was going to be different. Whether it was the same story, whether, we were playing the same songs, we always have something new in the production scheme. We always try to shake up the set list, bringing in some songs we haven't played in a number of years and, mixing it up that way. But, to answer your question, I really don't know what the surprises are, and I want to be as surprised as everybody else. When we go to rehearsals, I don't ask anything. I wait for them to build the stage. I wait for them to turn the lights off and then light that thing up, and I get to stand back and go, wow, they've done it again. But the production staff and the management team behind what we do are brilliant, and they've been able to keep the show fresh every year.
Yeah, we were looking at your tour dates. TSO is playing something like 110 shows in something like 66 days
Yeah.
in what, 48 days, 66 cities. I mean, you've got a jam-packed schedule starting in the middle of November.
So there are two different touring groups for the winter
Okay.
tour. There's a West Coast group and an East Coast group.
Okay,
And
got it. All
it
right.
was an interesting problem to have. We did the first tour in 1999. It was just 7 shows. Next year, there was 70 shows. How do we cover all this ground in this amount of time? And like I mentioned, Paul O'Neill's a New York City guy, and he was, big fan of Broadway, and a bunch of the people that were working around him were also involved in
Right.
Broadway. Let's split the original group in two. Let's fill out the cast, and we'll send each group out there playing the exact same show, same production. Obviously, the feel is going to be a little bit different in some places, but this is a way for us to cover all these shows in all these cities. And, without that, we could not accomplish what we've accomplished over these years. You mentioned 20 million tickets sold. We play to close to 1 million people every year. And, without the 2 bands, we could never do that.
Well,
So,
Trans-Siberian Orchestra is responsible for one of the largest viewed, I believe it's a New Year's Eve show in Berlin, right? Germany,
oh God,
years ago.
yes, this was, God, what was this? 2014,
Hmm.
New Year's Eve, going into 2015. We finished up our tour in Buffalo, New York, got on a plane after the tour, flew to Berlin, played in front of the Brandenburg Gates. The viewing audience, and I'll tell you, I was sitting on stage, there was people for miles. They said there was over 1 million people there. I mean, who's counting, right?
Right.
But it was just one of those surreal moments where I just could not believe we were in front of this many people doing what we were doing, plus the televised audience. I mean, this is huge throughout Europe. But that was one of the, a very proud moment for Paul O'Neill to be able to pull this off. But man, sitting on stage and being a part of that, something that huge, that was so surreal and awesome at the same time.
Part 2 of the 2020, obviously we're talking about the incredible demand from your audience to see TSO live. So with 20 million tickets sold, you guys obviously have a heart for charitable organizations as well, because a certain amount of money from each ticket sold goes to different charities, which means with those 20 million tickets, we're looking at around $20 million or so that Trans-Siberian Orchestra has donated to charities. How does that, make you feel?
Awesome. We're very proud of this. This was something that Paul O'Neill instituted from the very first ticket we sold in 1999. He felt this was a way to say thank you to the communities, the towns, the cities that brought us in to do our shows.
Mm.
But it also involves everybody in the audience. Everybody in the audience is part of this. They're donating to a charity that's helping somebody in their community, maybe even somebody that they know. And Paul was also very aware of the fact that, for the holidays, it's wonderful for some people and very difficult for others. So he felt this was just a way for us to lend a helping hand, also saying thank you at the same time. But hopefully this donation would help, put a smile on somebody's face and maybe help them get back on their feet again. But to date, $20 million across the country. We've donated everything from children's hospitals to food banks to you name it, everything in between. And every year I see this number get bigger and bigger, and it's something we're all very, very proud of.
Well, let me wish you and the rest of the band an early, very Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. And again, good luck on the upcoming tour. We're looking forward to seeing Trans-Siberian Orchestra at Bryce Jordan Center State College on November 21st. All the ticket information we're going to have posted on our Facebook, so everybody will be able to get all that information. Just a couple questions, real quick ones before we go. Okay, so playing in a band like Trans-Siberian Orchestra and being so much a part of everybody's holidays, Jeff, and we're talking with Jeff Plate, one of the original members of TSO. Jeff is the drummer. Are you a Christmas guy? Are you a Christmas and holiday guy as far as the decorations and the and the tinsel and the mistletoe and all that stuff yourself?
Sure, sure, absolutely. I grew up in upstate New York. I mean,
Okay.
when I was a kid, we had snow from Thanksgiving till the end of February. It was like, one of those winter postcards
Right.
that you see. I love winter. I love Christmas, the whole holiday spirit around it. My house, my wife does the most amazing job decorating, even though I'm not here.
Yeah.
She decorates the house. It is so awesome when I come home to be able to, just kind of take all that in, all that spirit and everything. But yeah, I absolutely love it. And it is, we are all away from home at Christmas, but this is what we do. Everybody knows the drill. Everybody knows what we're doing. The management team has done a very good job of making it comfortable for our families to come out and see us during the holidays and stuff like that. So we're never that far away, but to become tradition, a holiday tradition, it's a very heavy statement, but Paul O'Neill's work and this music and these stories it's just amazing what has happened over the years. And we're all just very humble and very proud to be a part of it.
Great. Thank you very much. We're talking with Jeff Plate. Jeff is the drummer, one of the original members of Trans-Siberian Orchestra. We encourage everybody to get out there and consume as much Trans-Siberian Orchestra music as you can. What's the best way for our listeners to to follow the band, find out more about music news, merchandise, things like that? Do you have a
www.trans-siberian.com. All the news is there, information on our music, on merchandise, and tickets. It's honestly the best place to go as far as purchasing tickets. So yeah, just check out that website. Everything's right there.
Got it. Thanks a lot. Jeff Plate from Trans-Siberian Orchestra. My name is Mark the Shark with Schlesinger Communications.